first Fallout was number 3. Some years ago, 3 or 4 at this point, after watching the show Jericho, and perhaps more importantly after watching and reading On the Beach and getting on a delayed nuclear war, Cold War kick, both in fiction and non-fiction, I also saw my boyfriend playing Fallout New Vegas and thought, hey, is that how video games look now? Because that looks amazing. And at that point, New Vegas was at least 3 years old, if not more. So I was permanently stuck in a Mario Kart, Sonic 1 through 3 type of mentality. I would never say I disliked video games or computer games, but I hadn't played them a lot, I wasn't very good at them, and I was stuck in the mentality of 90s games that I was horrible at, which, by the way, is why I'm so bad at Cuphead, because that kind of game drives me crazy. I had never played a sandbox game. I had never played something where you have so many choices and so many directions in which you can go. And Fallout 3 had all of that, and it actually hooked me before it even got to any decision making, anything at all, by using the ink spots I don't want to set the world on fire on that opening scene where it pans back and first you see a living room, I think, and then you realize that it's ruin and desolation and nuclear war. I think it probably would have worked anyway, but for me, there was a bonus hook because I have seen the 1986 British series The Sing Detective, which uses the ink spots, exactly that song, and similar strange songs to really good eerie effect. Basically, they're usually hallucinations, hospital hallucinations in a lot of cases, and they work really well and they're sort of disturbing. So I had a certain association with the ink spots being weird, but I don't think just that miniseries does it, obviously, because there are a bazillion more Fallout fans than there are The Singing Detective fans at this point in life. But Fallout 3 got me. But Fallout 3 was the first game that the purists actually frown upon, because the Fallout series began in 1997 with an isometric turn-based game, which I thought my graphics idea was stuck in the past before I played 3, but, to my eye, the first Fallout looks almost more primitive than I ever played. Like, it looks like an 80s game to me, honestly, in a lot of ways. I recently finally kind of figured out the controls of it, and I absolutely see why it's fun, but, it's tough. It's clearly really tough, and it takes a different type of patience than a first-person shooter type Fallout does. And that's okay. I can see the appeal. I just roll my eyes a little bit at the people who don't see the appeal of the other games. There's a very early purist movement that was against Fallout 3 and against changing it to a first-person shooter at all. But honestly, when I played I played 1 and a little bit of 2, more of 1 actually. And there are all these cutscenes of really cool things, and there are people talking, and there's a cutscene of leaving the nuclear vault, post-apocalyptic vault. And I thought about how, if I'd been playing video games, since 1980 or something like Fallout 3 would have been amazing, because finally I would get to play the cutscene, the thing that had been a cutscene. I was now experiencing it. And so I'm almost jealous of people who've been playing video games long enough to be amazed by the progress they've made. But at the same time, by only playing Mario Kart, and what have you for a solid decade, and getting so behind in games and not realizing the story potential and the decision-making potential in them, I still got to be wowed by a game that was 6 years old by the time I played it, something like that. So, video games. They're awesome, by the way. Purists who are not quite so purist love Fallout New Vegas because there's a lot of story continuation, plot continuation, a lot of references that I didn't understand when I played New Vegas. And it's my understanding that most of them reference Fallout 2, which I have played the least because it has this very confusing, very not immediately thrilling part called the Temple of Trials. You actually begin that game as a tribal living outside of a vault, whereas in almost, I think, every other game, you are a vault dweller of some kind. And I prefer that, because it's obviously more of the nuclear, post-nuclear aesthetic and the retro-future aesthetic that I crave so much. New Vegas is almost as amazing as they say on the Reddit, the subreddit and all that. I don't know that it's my favorite because it's more of a slow burn to get into. It didn't immediately grab me with spooky nuclear aesthetics as much. It's a Western, it's a bit of a man with no name thing where you start out having been shot in the head and you have to figure out who shot you and a few other mysteries. And it turns into a power struggle sort of post-apocalyptic experience, which is cool and isn't as obnoxious as the usual post-nuclear fiction where there's this amazing, terrifying beginning and then 5 minutes later survivors are bitching at each other. And, that happened to me on season 2 of The Walking Dead. It happened to me a couple episodes into this British series about super flu called Survivors. There's, almost without exception, the petty sniping of humans part of the post-nuclear thing is not as interesting. But when it's this grandiose power struggle as it is in New Vegas, and when you have all these choices to make, it's pretty cool. And spoiler alert, of course, I went with No Gods, No Masters, which is actually the name of the ending. And the game doesn't favor it that much, but my anarchist friend long ago told me it was a possibility, and I didn't realize that the game ending itself is called that, where you can betray every faction and basically live out things your own way. There's even a semi-anarchist faction, the Followers of the Apocalypse, they're called, and they're kind of a mutual aid society, so I dig them. As well as the Kings, who don't really have any politics except not being very evil, which is cool. So New Vegas is awesome. I've won your hearts with that, obviously. But now the controversial part where I tell you how much I love Fallout 4 so far. Some of the critiques of it are totally valid, such as the dialogue trees being less interesting, the decisions being less interesting, the plot and sort of your motivation as a character being even more limiting than it is in Fallout 3, where you're looking for your father. In this, you're looking for your child and for the person who killed your spouse, basically. But the opening of Fallout 4 is so good and so spooky. I've seen it 3 or 4 times now, playing and observing other people. And it's really good, and it drives me crazy that cranky people don't just revel in that as much. Because you start off in the retro-future suburbia, like a good suburban existence, except that you have a cool British robot and stuff. And the guy from Vault Tech comes to sell you a space in a vault, and people have explored whether you can ignore that, and you can't, because otherwise the game doesn't go anywhere. But very soon after, you realize you have a darling new baby and a fun robot friend and a handsome husband / beautiful wife, whatever you choose. Then the scary nuclear siren goes off, and you have to run to the local vault. And it has, limitations. The NPCs in the background are sort of slightly stilted in their panic, but there's enough dialogue and there's enough, I don't know, maybe if it doesn't do it for you, if you don't sit around imagining morbid Cold War things like I do, maybe it doesn't do it for you, but honestly, if you don't sit around imagining that, I'm not sure why you are a Fallout fan. And the run to the vaults and the panic of these completely computer characters, it's spooky. The nukes go off in the background just as the platform is lowered to go into the vault, and it works really well, and it works on repeat plays in my book. So that alone, I mean, it could be all downhill from there, but honestly, 4 has a lot of other things going for it as well. It's not as exciting to be in a city that you've never been to. Fallout 3 has DC and an expansion in Pittsburgh, so obviously that's great. I've seen enough of the Southwest to get that vibe, though I didn't realize how much of New Vegas has real stuff in it, real little towns. I've never been to Boston, and that's where Fallout 4 is set. But, you know, people pejoratively call it a first-person shooter, but if this be a first-person shooter, then, like, let us make the most of it, and I definitely do. And survival mode makes it even more interesting, where you don't have the option to fast travel from locations. You get hungry, thirsty, tired. It's a total pain in the ass, and it's great. And it actually makes the immersion quality a little bit easier because, you know, people have made these jokes. Okay, you're in this post-apocalyptic landscape because you were cryogenically frozen. Sorry to forget to mention that part. And your son has been stolen and your spouse has been killed. And so in normal play, you go out there and you start collecting, like cans to build something. When your son is in peril, that seems sort of weird. But in survival mode, basically you can tell yourself things are so difficult and dangerous out here that I can't go find my son. Because I may know how to take care of myself and fight, but this world is so dangerous that I have to go slowly from settlement to settlement and stay there and get food and get water and not get too irradiated. And it works, as immersion. So it's a good game, honestly. Fallout 4 is awesome, no matter what the haters say. And it has what most of them admit, if they're really honest, Bethesda, the game maker, does really well, which is the small details. The companions, the computer terminals that tell these stories of lost people and panic when the bombs dropped, and just all these different types of details that are really good. And you when you first leave the vault in 4, you go back to the place you lived, the neighborhood that's all bombed out, and your robot is still there, Codsworth, and he's been waiting for you for 200 years, which is always a little too much to be realistic. 3 had that same problem, but you know what? It doesn't matter. And poor Codsworth, was spent 10 years trying to clean nuclear fallout out of the linoleum and things like that. And there are these funny, poignant details, and that's what Fallout is black humor to me. It's what it does the best. It's somehow balances this absurd world that doesn't make sense. Radiation functions in a completely unrealistic manner, less realistic than, a 1952 cartoon guide to atomic energy. It just, water is more radiated than the ground, as opposed to, in real life where water is used to shield you from reactors and stuff. So, but it doesn't matter because it works. It sells this crazy, bleak, but occasionally hilarious world really well. And one of my favorite things in 4, well, I'll tell you what the problem is with the potential Fallout 76, which comes out in November. I was not that excited by the thought of a new Fallout solely because I'm not done with 4 yet, if you can believe it. I'm working my way through survival mode. I didn't used to have a laptop that could play a game that had needed that much processing power. So I'm still working on it. Spoilers, please, I guess. You're probably going to comment spoilers. Please don't. But Fallout 76 actually hooked me with the trailer. And usually when that happens with something, usually a film, it disappoints. And Fallout 76 is set in West Virginia, which I've been to. There were these subtle Easter eggs, something about the Mothman, and I'm a Mothman fan. I've been to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I've read the book. It's a great piece of local to West Virginia lore, and any even Easter egg reference to that would be amazing in a game. And the fact that Fallout 76 is set 25 years after this nuclear war, after the bombs drop. So the potential for the environment, for you, whoever you are, being really different is really exciting. If there's nuclear winter or something, which none of the games have ever dealt with, anything like that, new creatures, that mutated and didn't last. The prequel, this is the type of prequel that really excites me. But there are some reasons why it's less exciting. So Fallout 76 hooked me with that trailer, with its use of Rocky Mountain High, and it just looked amazing, basically. It really did. But then Todd Howard of Bethesda said those haunting words, it's going to be online only. I have never played an online game, if you can believe that. And my imagination is, my association is the Felicia Day web show The Guild, which is not super encouraging, or like imaginary 14-year-olds like yelling racial slurs at you after they, beat you at the game, like yelling through their headsets or something. But this is totally guessing. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I freely admit that. But there are a lot of people who were very worried immediately after hearing that it was online only because they didn't want to deal with other people. The concept of being able to play with one friend, say, is amazing. The concept of being shoved into a world with all of these real humans is not as exciting. And part of that is part of what makes that worse is that apparently there will also be no NPCs. There will be no human NPCs. Every human being you encounter will be played by an actual human being. There will apparently be robots that give you quests. Terminals will also give you quests. But I'm still not sure about, ghouls and super mutants and all the other creatures that exist in these worlds. But one of the great things about the Fallout games is the companions, the NPCs, that and even some of the NPCs that are not companions that you just encounter give me, it's a story feeling. It draws you into things. The first ghoul, some mutated sort of zombie-esque human. Some of them are feral and crazy and try to kill you, and some of them are normal. The first one that you meet, they will tell you about the years before the war in Fallout 3, and actually the day the bombs fell. It's, it's a silly premise, this 200-year-old woman, zombie woman telling you about it, but it's completely spooky. It's, it's a serious medium. All of the video game haters would like to deny that, or at least they did back in the day. No offense, and rest in peace, Roger Ebert. But, it's emotional, and it's a real story feeling, even if this context is, theoretically kind of silly. And the very first ghoul character I encountered ever was this bartender in the first little city you encounter in Fallout 3, and the dialogue options give you the option to be an asshole to him and basically say, ew, you're disgusting, what are you? Because you've just come out of a vault, you don't know this post-apocalyptic world, and, I am a softie, and why would I want to be mean to this poor ghoul guy? So I was nice to him, and he was appreciative and all that, but I could have been mean, it was up to me, and I've seen people now criticize, the Fallout 3 and 4's choices are not as broad or as deep as the games try to suggest they are, but, they were revelatory when I first played them, certainly. And 4 also has my BFF, no, I'm sorry, my boyfriend, Nick Valentine, the synthetic robot detective. And he is a great character. He has this great voice acting that's weirdly attractive. He's a robot detective, which fundamentally is awesome. And he has a whole plot line. And with the NPC companions in all the Fallout games, you can help them do something. I mean, they help you by fighting in most of them. Not really in 3, I guess. They don't really have quests. They're mostly just helpful. But, you know, they have goals and needs that you can help them complete. And you get really attached to these clearly not real human beings. And, you know, if my friend is playing a video game beside me and he dies, I don't care because it's not real. But if it's a computer dying and I can't get them back, you know, or I lose something, it's different because within the boundaries of that world, it's more real and the stakes are actually higher than they would be if just you're playing with your friend. And so it actually feels, to me, it seems like it will be less emotionally effective without NPCs, Fallout 76. It might be frustrating if someone's being a jerk and lobbing nukes at you, but it won't necessarily be as powerful from a storytelling perspective. And that is not, you know, that doesn't give me hope for the game. There's some maybe aspects of Fallout 76 as well. Apparently you can use nukes. And, well, you're already in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Now, the Fallout world doesn't make, the pre-war world doesn't make any damn sense. It's this retro future thing. It's got nuclear-powered cars. There is a bunch of lore that tries to explain as much as possible, which includes a loss of fossil fuels. But, you know, it's an aesthetic. It's modeled after retro future designs that were not, you know, thought out completely in 1961 or 1958. They're merely, you know, someone's really kick-ass illustration of what the world of tomorrow will look like. And so it didn't make any sense to translate that, but they did it anyway, and it's awesome. But the news that in Fallout 76, you can get a launch key and you can nuke parts of the map, a lot of people hated that news immediately. I think about, you know, nuclear fiction like A Canticle for Leibowitz, or even Battlestar Galactica a little bit, where it's all about repetition. It's about the mistakes man makes being made again in the exact same fashion. There's a Twilight Zone episode or 2 that deals with this. The episode 3rd from the Sun is fantastic. You know, A Canticle for Leibowitz is one of the most haunting books you'll ever read. And, spoiler alert, the world is nuked and all this knowledge and science is forgotten. And by the end of the book, sort of there are 3 acts, the world has been nuked again. So not only do we kill ourselves in nuclear fire once, we do it twice in one book. It's quite a read. I mean, I don't know if it's a bunch of 25-year-olds playing this co-op online game can bring about any kind of nuance or solemnity to, haha, I'm gonna nuke all you guys. But, you know, maybe it can. The amount of emotional resonance that these games actually have in this silly setting with these silly creatures, this silly sense of mutation and radiation and just the worst science imaginable, and there's still this powerfulness. So I'm not saying it's impossible for this function to be used well from a storytelling perspective, but it does seem clunky. On the other hand, in Fallout 3, you can blow up the city Megaton, which has a live nuclear warhead in the middle of it, and a cult worships it. I have never done so, because that seems mean, and I don't want my father, voiced by Liam Neeson, to be mad at me. So I didn't do that. Apparently in Japan, that part's cut out for pretty obvious reasons. And there is an expanded, the final expanded, the DLC in Fallout New Vegas. You can actually point nukes somewhere, and I didn't do that either, because I don't like nuking stuff, even in fiction. I'm too nice in fiction. Maybe it hinders my playing. I don't want to. I don't want to side with the Legion in Fallout New Vegas because they're basically ISIS. Another aspect to 76 that I'm sort of on the fence about kind of ties into the fact that I am always a goody-goody when it comes to playing video games. If you picture your actual survival scenario, perhaps a post-apocalyptic one. And you're strolling around and you have your sidearm and your small supply of food and things aren't great. And you encounter another human being and there is going to be this question of, do I trust them? Do they trust me? Are we both going to shoot each other dead? In the previous Fallout games, there's sometimes, with creatures or humans, you talk to them, but usually with human factions, with raiders, you shoot at them and they shoot at you, and there is no opportunity to put down your arms and say, all right, I don't want, let's there's no need to kill each other today. And that, for AI, that's a lot to ask. But if I'm a human with my post-apocalyptic avatar and you are also one, there is this potential for uneasy sort of immersive truces, which could be really cool and really sort of nerve-wracking, which even though I love Fallout, it's not nerve-wracking anymore, except occasionally if you encounter like a glowing death claw on a roof, for example, and you have to jump off and it's scary. But like the really spooky feelings I got when I first played 3, they're not quite there anymore. It could work with this. Or you could get a bunch of assholes just shooting everyone and sort of... You're going to have to depend on other people to help provide this atmosphere, and so it's a total gamble. And it might be a disaster, but it might be a disaster in one playthrough, and maybe the next week it won't be. I really don't know. Another nice thing is that I'll actually be able to play Fallout with my friends now. Not with my boyfriend, unfortunately, who doesn't like online games, and also that would require buying 2 games, so that's a pain. But with my friends who like Fallout, who don't live in the same house as me, I might actually get to play Fallout with them. And that is exciting. I have 1 or 2 friends that I'm going to make a point to try to play with them. And, my memories of playing video games with other people is some fond memories of early 2000s Mario Kart 64, but also memories of sucking at games in the 90s and sucking at GoldenEye. And I am hoping that I can still play Fallout, mildly competently when other non-computer humans are watching, but I guess we'll have to see. Again, the setting is fabulous, geographical and time-wise, and there is some weird hint about the Mothman. You're going to encounter crazy flying creatures, and West Virginia lore appears to be a part of this, which is like, it's like I requested that in my dreams. But if I don't like online play, if the game is disappointing in other ways, I'm going to be kind of upset that they used this time and this geography for this game. Because Fallout 5, whenever it appears, is going to be single player, undoubtedly, even if they figure out how to do other options by that time. It's not going to be an online-only game like 76. And so I might be just mad that they used, a semi-southern, semi-wild setting like this. But again, we'll see. It certainly makes me excited to play, even in this online form. Some disappointing stuff, potentially, about Fallout 76. And there's some maybes. But there's also some things that I'm pretty damn excited about. I am still excited about West Virginia as a setting. I'm excited that it's set 25 years after the bombs fall, which gives it a different vibe and a different flavor, I'm sure, than other games. And I'm excited about that, and I hope it's not ruined. But I'm not actually upset, like some people appear to be, that there is an online multiplayer Fallout. I think that's awesome. I think that that's something that Bethesda or whomever should do. I just don't want them to waste some of their other great ideas if it is a disaster. And I don't think it will be, at least not after, some patches and bug fixes and what have you. It makes me more excited and more worried, I guess. That trailer was so good, but the trailer, I had no hype, and then the trailer made my hype go, woo, and then Todd Howard said online only, and I went, oh. But that was a really good trailer. The idea of new creatures is really cool. Apparently, very savvy, awesome nerds noticed that in the trailer there are some creatures that look a little bit like some designs from the tossed out pre-Fallout 3 sequel to Fallout 2. That was called I'm blanking. I'm immediately blanking. I'm sorry about that. But it was the rejected, partially made sequel. Some of it was used for subsequent games, but there's a creature design with these big lumbering sort of limbs that in the trailer is like spooky and kind of like nauseating in a great way, the way that the centaurs in the Fallout games are, where you're like, oh god, what is that? I'm scared. So that's good. That's awesome. We want that. And whatever the hell is flying around in the trailer too, the Mothman-esque thing and the scorched, partially burned people, and all the just like gross, awesome, scary creatures that we have been teased with so far in the trailer. Just give me new stuff and give me new spins on creatures we've seen before. Give me the precursor to various super mutants, even if the lore could be figured out or retconned or what have you. Give me half feral ghouls. Give me stuff that flies. Give me, the first death claws or like a different type of death claw. Just give me that. And the fact that they're interested in West Virginia's myths and lore and this sort of spooky down in the holler vibe, totally awesome. It's so rich. That setting is so rich with potential, and they're also, they're using all these real locations like Bethesda and Obsidian always do, including, I believe, the New River Gorge, which I've been to, which is one of the tallest bridges in the country, where people go base jumping off of it sometimes and probably occasionally get killed. They have some buildings that at least or look like they're based off West Virginia University, and hopefully Point Pleasant, where the Mothman was first seen in the 60s in real life, shows up. And also there is the very real giant bunker that is under a hotel in West Virginia, where the government was actually supposed to go if there was a nuclear war, and its existence was a complete secret until sometime in the 90s, I believe. And that is also referenced in the game as well. And so there's so much real landmarks warped and people warped into strange creatures, and it's what Fallout is all about to me. As much as I like good dialogue and role-playing-esque options, to me it's just being able to walk around in this unsettled world. That's what I love so much. And the other reason to be optimistic is that it's Fallout. I haven't played the legendarily terrible Fallout Brotherhood of Steel that's so bad that it's no longer canon. Or the apparently pretty dismal, but at least not as god-awful Fallout Tactics. But every actual Fallout, that's in the canon, 1, 2, 3, New Vegas, and 4, they're all amazing. As many Reddit fight as I've seen happen, they're great. And I'm excited about Fallout 76 because the word Fallout's there. Call me easy, but that's enough for me to fork over my cash. I'm not a discerning enough customer, perhaps, but give it to me now. That's all. It's Fallout. I want it.